Coming to you from top secret field offices worldwide, brave men and women fight a battle for truth, justice, and good, clean data. These agents of change make up the Bureau of Records, Objects, and Standards. They are the Data B.R.O.S.
Hey everybody, welcome to Data B.R.O.S. episode 2, the Bureau of Records, Objects, and Standards. This is a comic book industry podcast about comic book data, the comic book industry, and running a retail shop. That's right. This is your weekly 30-minute appointment with us to hang out and talk shop. I am Jeff Figley, and I am joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Brian Garside.
Hey, that's me.
And Django Boren.
Me, I'm Django.
Hey boys, nice to see you both.
Good to see you,
Jeff. I wish we could get together more than once a week, guys.
How you guys been in the last week? Everything good?
Oh my God, the customer appreciation sale has fallen apart.
The store's on fire.
The store's on fire. I'm just kidding. Django, don't joke
so
about
appreciated.
that. In the last 2 weeks, 2 different businesses in downtown in Bellingham have burnt down.
Oh, you're right. The store is flooding.
Not only that, Django and I were on a call one night just chatting, and he's like, "Oh, I think I have to go to the store." Oh, weird things are happening on this camera. I should go to the store. I'm like, go to the store, dude. And then he had to run back to the store.
Was there anything good down there, Django?
Just a guy who was very clearly going through our back issues and pulling out unrelated books that were valuable to steal. And then his girlfriend came in and told him his Pokemon cards were getting rained on and he had to leave in a hurry.
Huh. Okay.
Super sketchy and very clear what his intentions were.
Yeah.
It's probably fine.
I'm pretty excited about episode number 2 here, fellas. So this is episode 2 of this fair podcast project in which Django has officially titled the Data and Torrid Affairs with the Bureau. I like that. But as it's January right now, it is the perfect opportunity for us to be looking at our most subscribed series like we did last week, but particularly excited to talk about the top 5 most sold single issues in our store and through Manage Comics, which Brian is overseeing, which is pretty interesting stuff. Shall I kick this thing off?
Yeah. So for us, I'm going to talk about the things that were received versus sold because we don't have sell-through data yet. That is something we're going to be adding kind of second half of the year. But I can definitely say these are the things that were checked in versus even I could say like these are the things that were most subscribed to. But I can't give you sold numbers, but I think this will still give you a pretty good picture. And publishers will be interested in this information.
And I think that our numbers are going to be surprising to some people. I think our top selling book is not what you think our top selling book is.
Exactly.
I think I know what your top selling book is, and it is not at all what anybody I've ever talked to would have as their top selling book.
And that top selling book, which I'm very excited for the conversation that will surround it, perhaps after we get through our lists.
Hey, wait.
Yeah.
I have a quick question to ask. Do we
Please.
want to do this in zipper order, meaning that you'll do number 1, then I'll do my number 1 and my number 2, and then you do your number 2 and number 3, and then
let's start at the bottom and go up. What do you think?
Oh, 5 up. I love it. Let's do it.
Yep.
So you go you go your 5, and then I'll jump in my 5.
Oh, number 5. Okay, cool. Well, that is easy and boring because number 2 through 6 are all the same series for us, as well as number 8. But that spot is confidently held by Saga, our highest subscribed comic book in the shop. We can reliably sell 65 to 71 copies of a Saga comic. That's 61. We sold 69 issues of. Nice. Interestingly, 66, we only sold 55 issues of, 10 less than the issue before it. And interestingly enough, 66 also was very low, but then you know what? Those ones are just the most recent ones. Yeah. So Saga, Brian, actually, if you want to do 5, 4, 3, and 2, that's probably good. I thought we were going to do 10 up. So,
so what I did with mine is I kind of stripped out duplicates. So like, for example, Batman's going to be in there a bunch of times. So
Cool.
I pulled out all the Batmans other than the first time, and I pulled out all the Spider-Mans, Amazing
Okay,
Spider-Mans.
I'm gonna do what Brian did, and in that case, tied for our 10th/5th spot is Batman 134. But more interesting, I think, than that is Batman Gargoyle of Gotham #2 with the same number of claimed issues, so total sales plus the ones that are currently held aside for people in their polls.
Wow.
And Batman 134. So that spot locked up by Batman.
Interesting. Our number 5 is Transformers #1.
Heck yeah. I am
And-
surprised that's not on our list.
And it is 25% less than our number 1. So it's pretty tight there at the top. We're talking like, a 25% difference. And again, there's a bunch of multiple issues of series in between these. So it's actually our number 8, but it's our number 5 if we go unique.
Yeah, it's all a little mushy, isn't it?
Yeah.
After that for us is Batman. So yeah, Batman and Saga locking that up. But the next interesting one is Batman Gargoyle of Gotham #1. 57 copies sold in our store.
Interesting. Batman Gargoyle of Gotham comes in around number 10 for us, but our number 4 is Amazing Spider-Man #35 with 20.8.
It's
there's
very interesting how well Gargoyle of Gotham has done in my mind.
There's a really interesting thing that I noted too, is that our number 10 is actually the second printing of Spider-Man #7, the first appearance of Spider-Boy.
Comics
That
are
is
so messy.
interesting.
It sold significantly better than Spider-Man #7.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Which I'd be interested in finding out if that was like something that Marvel saw, or is it because our stores have a very strong online presence where they selling just a lot of this kind of that way. So yeah, interesting number to see. What's your number 3?
Yeah, let's say 3 and 2 are Saga because they actually have the 2 through 6 spot.
Okay.
Just the current volume of Saga, like I said, anywhere from 65 to 71 for the ones that have been out for over a month.
Our number 3 with 17.98% of what our number 1 will come out to is Batman 137 cover A, George Jimenez, Batman, Catwoman, The Gotham War, Part 1.
Interesting. 2 still being Saga for us, but I thought it was interesting to mention that the highest selling issue of Saga for us is 90% of what our highest selling issue was.
90%,
which is
wow.
insane. Saga
Yeah.
was only 90% of this highest selling book. What was your number 2?
Our number 2 is World Tree #1 with 2.3% less than our number 1. Our number 1 shouldn't be too surprising, but I'll be interested in hearing your number 1 first.
Our number 1 from
Sold
Vault
really
Comics, the free to order and returnable Unnatural Order #1 cover A.
90 copies.
90 copies of that.
That's so interesting. And I feel like I need to dig into why there isn't more of that on our, because you were allowed to order like up to 150 of those for free or something.
We were
You can order as
asked
many
to
as you
order
want.
200 at least.
So that seems like a big miss, and I'm interested in digging in a little bit more on why that didn't get processed by our system. So I'm gonna need
so it was ordered in bundles of 25. Right? So you'd have to find that number and multiply it, but that still doesn't tell you how many of those comics got in people's hands. We've done extremely well with that issue, but it is messy to grok that data for that particular comic.
Django, I think it bears mentioning what we did to sell that much of that comic.
Yeah, let's find out what Brian's number 1 was.
Oh, sorry.
Then let's talk about that.
Yeah, because I think what you guys did is, if I can almost swear, frickin' genius. But our number 1 was Void Rivals #1. And I think this one speaks really well to exactly what you're experiencing with Unnatural Order. There was such great publisher support for this. And it's the only time I can think of where retailers didn't spoil the surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an opportunity to really spoil, the Transformers tie-in of Void Rivals. And it's also a Hasbro property, which I didn't know. I thought it was like a Kirkman kind of original, but it's a Rivals is going to be a Hasbro property that continues
because Kirkman wrote it into the Hasbro universe, right?
Yeah,
like it wasn't pre-existing.
No, it's new.
Yeah.
But I think like Hasbro owns the IP for Void Rivals, and
Okay.
I don't know exactly how that is working, but
it is worth mentioning that across the various covers for Transformers #1, our sales are closer to 65, which would put it at a top 5 comic for us across like 7 covers,
right,
and additional printings.
Interesting. Yeah. And next time we do this, I would really like to be able to merge covers together. So this has given me some really good ideas of how to do this kind of information going forward. But this was fun. Last night, I had Charas pull up some queries for me in order to do this, and it was not super easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to get this kind of information out there because I think it's really interesting for publishers. And I know like Heidi from The Beat has asked me for this. Milton from ICV2 has asked me for this.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get this out there, I think it would be really good.
So what we did with Unnatural Order was inspired by another retailer. So the setup is that Vault Comics offered these books at zero cost to retailers and asked retailers to order in bundles of 25. They said, please order 8 bundles of 25. That's way more than we would order of most things. But we went ahead and did it. And a couple days before it came out, we still hadn't really decided how we were going to sell it. Another aspect of the behind the scenes thing is that they were making #2 fully returnable and FOCing it after the comic had been out for a week. So they were like setting this comic up to they were doing everything that retailers ask for often. The only kind of downside was that it was publicized that we were getting the first issue for free.
Okay.
And so Jeff and I sat down a day or so before release and discussed different options that retailers had been talking about on Facebook forums. And what we opted to do, I feel like this might have been what Coliseum did as well. I can't remember who it was that
we respect the way the Coliseum does a lot of stuff. So we take their business models with an extra, I guess the opposite of an extra grain of salt.
We pay attention to what they're doing and it's inspiring at the very least. But so what we did is we put a copy of this in every single file that had a comic pulled that week.
Okay.
And then we offered it for free. No, I'm sorry. We offered #2 free if you buy #1. And so we did that for everybody who had it in their file. We did it for anybody who wanted to buy it off the shelf. It was just a thing that everybody in the store talked about and made sure was clear to everybody. And we sold 90 copies of #1 with the promise of a free #2 coming soon.
So that's 90 copies at I think it was a $5 book, right?
$4.99.
Yeah. So 90 copies at $5 with the promise that they're going to get #2 for free.
Yeah.
That's 2 comics that's a comic for $250.
It's a screaming deal, and it's a 4-issue series. So, the hope is that they like 1 and 2. #1 was a solid read. The cliffhanger was good. Like, it was an easy thing to describe to people and pitch to people. It was, it's like a barbarian setting, which doesn't do anything for me normally, but the cliffhanger on the last page, I was like, oh no, this is pretty cool. So far and away our bestseller in the store, brand new series. And we're trying it again with their new series Beyond Real.
That's the thing that
be interesting to see how that does.
Interested to talk about, and I have some numbers for how that one has done. So what I think is interesting to talk about it with Unnatural Order is kind of going back to that episode 1 that we talked about with the idea of the personal nature or the goodwill that people have for their hub. So for us, it was presented like, hey, here's a really cool opportunity that was presented to us, and we want to pass it along to you guys. To me, a huge number of those sales were goodwill purchases from our customers towards us. like, oh, I want to support you guys do that. Like, we see that a tremendous amount. It's one of the benefits of a comic shop. But what I think is that just like that Goodwill thing, which informed how much Django and I ordered of that copy, which was 200, I think there's got to be diminishing returns on something like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so if you look at Beyond Real #1, which was sold to us in the same way, and we presented to our customers with the same opportunity, you get #2 with the same flyer and everything. We have sold 43 copies of Beyond Real #1 with 27 in polls, which is roughly 70 claimed copies. Still very high. I am very interested to see what this does for other series in the future, because if this opportunity is presented to us, I do not think that our customers will think it is as unique and interesting 6 months from now when it's the 6th book that's doing this.
Right.
And also that desire to help us out, I think, will be diminished.
Right.
So I think it's a really cool, smart thing to do. I'm really proud of what we did with it and for the sales that we're able to gain from it. Still, we have not seen any issue 2 sale data. We haven't gotten it in yet. That's been a little dangerous, the delay between 1 and 2. But
issue
also,
3 is going to be like the subscription issue.
Yeah. And we used to do a thing like Coliseum of Comics had started this thing called Comic Omnivore before the pandemic, which was a little bit like Image's image returnability, image first thing. You order a ton of first issues that they would pick. They would be returnable. We would do that. We didn't get the returnability stuff met a lot of the time. We didn't get first issues sometimes. All that to say, that program never was anything other than a money loss for us. So this one is going to be tricky. Like, we have these huge sales for #2 because it's free based on #1, but who's going to pay for it? And how much money are we going to lose trying to be optimistic about the number that we can sell that don't actually sell? Beyond Real, I think in a perfect world would have come out a little bit after the 2nd issue of Unnatural Order. So we would have a little bit more information on this business model while ordering a 2nd series. All that to say, big ups to you, Vault.
And like, if you compare it to our normal Vault numbers for a new launch from them, like, this is more than 10 times what we would sell for #1.
Yeah.
For most of their series. So you know, it some stores had decent success with this. I think ours blew our expectations out of the water, and I appreciate the opportunity to do something a little bit weird.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right?
Yeah, Django, we've always bitten when people have done that type of thing for us, whether it's Robert Kirkman with his surprise series, like I guess Kirkman's to blame for a lot of it, not blame.
I was just thinking
Django and I love seeing people trying new things in the industry. So we can't speak for every comic shop, but we will always play ball. If you guys are trying something new with us and you're making it seem like we have a real opportunity to make money.
Yeah.
Hey, some important messages coming up. Stick around.
Hi there, it's Carrie Murphy, Chair of the Board of Directors of Murphy's Apple Juice, and I'm here to update you on some of the exciting activities at Murphy's. The Board of Directors of Murphy's Apple Juice, LLC, is currently moving in a different direction than its CEO and founder, my grandpa, Bob Murphy. No, that's enough of that. We don't need any ukuleles for this announcement. To this end, we're ceasing many of his initiatives, including the unique shaped bottles that he has been insisting Murphy's Apple Juice use, and instead we will be moving to an industry-standard Tetra Pak system, while also innovating by creating our packs out of a unique patented system which uses apple cores and peels in an industry-first 100% fruit-based compostable package. The board is proud to continue our relationship with the Data B.R.O.S, and we'll be furnishing you with updated ads in the coming weeks, which will include our new slogan, Murphy's Apple Juice. It's not the shape, it's the taste. And the taste is pretty dang good.
Okay, let's get you back to the show now.
That kind of brings us to Discoverability, which I believe is this week's. Like, we've got that theme song now, right? Like, industry.
Can you play the theme,
industry. Jeff just hit.
I've got the button right. did I tell you guys about this week? Like just
No, like
all the
because
stuff
we
that I
also
did?
didn't hear we didn't hear the theme for Data B.R.O.Ification, which I think that was the big crescendo one, right? And the
Right.
industry Yammer,
Right.
isn't it like Yammer, like
Right. I'm still gathering all the audio samples.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
music is done. I just
'Cause
need a bunch of Yammer audio samples to get in
It's
there.
just it's like it's been a week, right? Like we
Right.
expected, you know,
Yeah, but
every
like
week.
this is a
Right.
data
It's
podcast, not a
fine,
music podcast.
No, that's
like,
fair. That's fair.
Well,
We
So
can, we
I
can
do-
push it a week.
industry
I do a music.
Yammer.
I do a music
Yammer.
podcast also.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you
Looking
may
forward to
probably
hearing
get-
that one.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
probably
I've got the
stings
raw
on
audio
that
for it
one
if you want.
good stings on every segment for that one. I imagine.
Let's have
Industry
a little
Yammer.
industry yammer. Let's get
Yammer.
the yams out, everybody. I'm feeling
Yam-
a little bit more like a sweet potato
Yummy.
this week. But last week we teased the idea of loyalty hiding pervasive problems within comic shops, speaking to the goodwill between customers and comic shops, but how much that can allow stores to maybe live off the fat of the land more than working for that buck.
You know-
So I'm really excited to hear some of the thoughts that y'all have about that were teased last week.
Yeah, what I think is kind of interesting about discoverability personally is that like I am fairly mired in the data, but at some point that data has lost its like relevance and meaning to me, and it no longer becomes like these are comics. This is data that I'm consuming to try and fix it. And so there's so many times where something is right in front of my face, and the first time I hear about it is when I listen to your podcast. And like I've known about this for ages, right? So a good example of that was Outsiders, and I think I've talked about this before. I didn't even find out about Outsiders until I walked into the store and I saw a copy sitting on the shelf. So I grabbed it and I get home, and it was a Saturday too. And I remember getting home and I read it and I was like, oh, this is exactly my, like Planetary is literally one of my top 10 favorite comics of all time. So I read it and I instantly go on to Manage Comics, which is my online comic subscription service that my local store actually uses. And I go to subscribe, right? And the next issue I can get is number 3. This is Saturday of a book that came out on Wednesday. And the next issue I can get is number 3. And then I started looking into it. And like, this is super pervasive with DC right now, especially in December. There were tons of books like that. And so like, okay, I found the first issue, but now I may never get the second issue. And if I don't get the second issue, as a comics nerd, what is the point of getting a third issue of something I can't get the second issue? Right? Like
you don't
this
collect
is-
something to just have some of it.
Hey,
right?
I've heard that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. What's the point? So
Did
yeah,
Jack Kirby say that?
My friend Django Bourne did. It's one of my favorite
Oh.
Django quotes.
The smart guy.
That-
Yeah.
that's my experience with discoverability as like a customer. I'm curious, how do you guys deal with that as retailers who are facing that same thing? And issue number 2 was not returnable, so you'd be taking a flyer on 2 issues instead of just 1, which I imagine is pretty scary.
And then you got to take a flyer on the third issue too, because a lot of people won't subscribe until the third one. It's something we vacillated on a lot. Like
Yeah.
every time I'm like, man, it'd be nice to have more number ones. Jeff's like, you just said would be nice to have less number ones. And he does most of the ordering, so I can't really tell you exactly what goes on in that mop covered head of his.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that I don't think has like a one-to-one answer, right? Like, I think every comic shop does it differently, and I've spent years dialing in how we approach that, and even still it's always changing. And anytime, like we just did store inventory, and anytime we do that and I have to look at what hasn't sold, it's like staring doom in the face. Because it's an incredibly difficult industry to make money in, because of what you're describing. You want people to shop in your store because of the availability of the product, but you don't want to go broke trying to make sure there is a lot of availability there. So, ours has been informed by me spending a decade watching people buy things and tracking their interest trends. And so our logic is deeply tied into our customer base. But every store is, I would assume, is similar and therefore different. So,
Well, and think what a lot of customers don't realize is that for every single issue that sits on the shelf, you have to sell 2 issues.
Yeah.
Yep.
To kind of break even with that issue. What you mentioned about number 3 being the first issue that people will subscribe to is really interesting, because our subscription numbers for Transformers number 3 are 20% higher than our subscription numbers for Transformers number 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that I had kind of originally attributed that to an increase in stores, but we only added like 5 stores that month. So there's no way a 20% increase is from 5 stores.
So that's
So
people
that's
subscribing starting after they've read number 2.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Or after number 2 has been
Even-
ordered, which
yeah.
who knows exactly what that cycle was.
Yeah, exactly. It could have even
yeah,
been after number 1.
Yeah, it's a super interesting thing, and it's difficult because there are so many comics that come out every month, and there is a limited amount of shelf space and a limited amount of time to process them when they come off the new shelf. And
it's a real danger. I mean, Brian pointing out that specific point is one of the dangers, right? That series is an outlier.
Yeah.
Generally, readership goes down as issues come out. So for us, we talked earlier, we sold around 65 copies of issue number 1 of Transformers. We still have plenty of shelf copies of number 2 that we ordered 40 copies of. So it's gone down now. So while the subscription rate is higher than it was at number 1, the actual copies being sold is lower. I used to do a lot of ordering, bearing in mind the type of reader that would come in and maybe get turned on to a Transformers comic when 3 issues are out and therefore want to buy 1 through 3. Our business model now is a lot less concerned about that type of consumer. Not that we don't want to serve them well, but I think that we've gotten more confident with the idea that the people that we sell our weekly issues to are generally people who are in pretty much every week. So I don't need to worry as much about having a Transformers number 2 on the shelf by the time issue number 4 has come out. I think that's a general change towards us, has been moving towards trying to sell out of things rather than having things around for lapsed readers to be able to catch up on, which is, just your Transformers anecdote is a really interesting one, but is one of the ones that like I hold on to those smaller stories a lot, and it can negatively inform how much money I can make on comics.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, and especially when trades come out pretty regularly to kind of catch up on things. Like I think Void Rivals number 6 came out, and then there's going to be a break in it until they collect it, and then they're going back to number 7 if I remember right.
That sounds like the Image model.
Yeah, which I think that makes a ton of sense. And I don't know, like I know that DC does a lot of those things where they'll collect the first 3 issues of something, and throw that together. And I think they did that with like Justice Society recently.
Yeah, and Marvel Tales frequently does that. It's an interesting spot, and we could talk about it forever because it's so much of my life. But yeah, like Django and I, he'll bring it up and then he'll watch my head kind of explode for like 8 seconds, but I'm always totally willing to like be flexible. But like I think our kind of last conversation was, hey, I'd really like if we had as many copies of number 3 for Marvel series as we do of number 1. And like there's been a positive aspect of that. Also, I feel pretty comfortable being able to cut things down by 3 based on sales for 1 and 2. Yeah, it's an
So I've got an interesting question for you guys. I listened to the Challengers podcast. I think we're both patrons there, Django.
Yep. Yeah, I'm the president of the Brian Garside fan club.
I've heard that a few times. Yeah. One of the things that Dal gets really frustrated with is that people don't subscribe to stuff well before, and that they send out emails and stuff like that, and those emails go unread. And I totally get that. Like I probably get 250 emails a week from comic publishers because I get all of the publisher emails, right, for through Manage Comics, and I don't pay attention to it. Like I should know that Outsiders number 1 came out. I should know it, but I don't. So as a retailer, what can you do to help me not be stupid, right? Like I pretty much live on all the comic sites, and I still manage to avoid this. Like, what have I done wrong in my
I mean,
life?
what we do
Help
is
me be a better customer.
what we do is we have a setting in Comic Shop Assistant where we just ask you, the customer, do you want us to automatically subscribe you to things? And when we are going through the catalog every month or every week, Jeff will go through and he'll see, oh, here's a Batman comic. Let's move everybody who gets normal Batman over to this Batman Gargoyle of Gotham or whatever. And
How dangerous is that with something like Batman? Like in Manage Comics, Batman's the #1 most subscribed to series.
It's
If I were to add them to
relatively
Off-World, for example.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, dangerous isn't necessarily the right word. You need to be relatively informed when you do it. So Batman Gargoyle of Gotham, I think we moved like the main Batman subscribers over to it. In general,
and it's not everybody.
I was just
No.
going to say, and this is only people who've opted in to, I want other Batman related stuff.
But
Mhm.
you know, like math, you want to find lowest common denominators rather than outliers. So for a new Batman book that is dealing with outsiders, I would be more likely to auto sub people who got James Tynion's Detective Run, because that dealt
Right.
largely with ancillary characters. And I would look at, you know, I don't use the largest subscribed series as a basis for auto subs very often. Unless it screams, obviously you should. But like for Batman Off-World, I think I did like Batman Fortress because it was a Batman space alien type story. And then I also did Jason Aaron's Avengers run had a relatively low sub count by the end. So I moved those people over. So
That's
it's
interesting.
always a little, you use what you know about the series and your subscribers to do it. But you can totally take a bath on it. You know, there's been auto sub books that people really don't want. So,
some of the Beast World stuff is seeing a lot of kickbacks right now.
Yeah.
Some of the like the spin-offs and one-shots, and you know, some of them are a lot more interesting than others too. So.
Night Terrors was
that
really
down
interesting
here.
because it sort of changed the way that we auto sub people to DC events. And we basically created a paradigm with Night Terrors that if you weren't auto subbed and didn't ask for it, we're comfortable selling out of that and having you have asked for it. So in terms of making better customers, obviously the best thing you can do to help a comic shop is pre-order your books. You can find that information by looking at solicitations on websites like Bleeding Cool. There's many others, but a month before a thing comes out, you should easily be able to find solicitations. We put them up on our Comics Place website. That way you can pre-order those books, but even having a vague awareness of general things. So I guess the best thing you can do is like comics enough to independently seek out comic information to inform how you want to be communicating with your comic shop. Brian, you're saying you already do that, so it is hard to know.
I think part of it is on part of it's on the shops too. You know, like if you want to sell more comics, you have this tool. You've got this rabid fan base, and if you put in the work to know who they are or track what they're interested in, you can put stuff in front of them that they absolutely want that they might have missed, and they'll give you Canadian money for it if you live in Canada.
Yeah, what's funny is I'm subscribed to Void Rivals, Transformers, and Cobra Commander, and nobody suggested Duke to me.
Yeah, and so that's like a lot missed opportunity for them. It's not a guaranteed sale, but like when I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but often you will go, you'll do auto subs for an annual, and then not really order any for the shelf, and we'll populate the shelf with with people kicking them back.
Yep, exactly.
That's
and
annuals too.
Yeah, and I feel pretty comfortable with the mental math I do, decreasing quantities as issues go out. But I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's cool.
What I was going to say is, so I feel kind of comfortable with my paradigm there, but what I don't feel comfortable with, and I think that I'm proud that we haven't gotten comfortable, is feeling like we have never and probably never will reach the end goal of the level of communication we have with our customers before the time of order. So Django and I have talked about, okay, like, we want to, when we auto sub people, get emails automated out to tell people if they were auto sub for something and why, but also let people know if they weren't auto sub for something that this is why.
Right.
So I think that is a never ending avenue for comic shops to always be trying to refine that level of communication. I think I'll always ask customers to do more, but it has to be on the comic shop to make that avenue of finding the information clear, and then the avenue for them to then communicate to the comic store owner. We went a little bit long in our middle section here, guys.
Tight 30, boys. Tight 30.
I feel like that was also shop talk in there, right? Like,
I think
can you take those two theme songs, like the jingly jangly ice cream one and the crescendo, and maybe do a remix together for that?
Part of the holdup is that I am doing remix hybrids of all the themes, so that when we do a thing like this, we can have
makes sense.
Combined themes.
This is fractal music. It seems right up your alley.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard Tool, but they're a cool band.
Why does every song have to be 15 minutes long?
That's a good question, Brian.
You ever listen to Rush? King Crimson?
I bet we can answer that question next episode.
Yeah.
Why
next episode.
Every Tool song has to be 15 minutes? Next time on Data Bros.
I'm pretty excited for next episode, you guys. We're going to be talking a little bit about the top 5 selling trades and hardcovers in our stores and systems. We're also going to be talking about discoverability with returnability and FOC dates, and a little shop talk for some stores changes that we've made that I'm excited to share with you guys and get some feedback on. As always, you can get a hold of us. Brian, you want to let them know how they can get a hold of this specific podcast?
Yeah, they can send an email to podcast@databrosinc.com. That's podcast@databrosinc.com.
Please send us emails. We want to make this a loose 30 eventually.
Like, it's been a week and we've got 0 emails since last
They're waiting
week,
for the theme music.
Probably, yeah.
When we're over 30,
next
Brian,
week,
that just falls on you to get in there and find the least interesting stuff to cut out to make us a tight 30.
It's me.
Right.
It's
tight
me.
30.
It's fine. 30. It's me.
Well, thank
you.
You
can catch me. You can catch me
at
Manage Comics on all the socials. I'm there on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Happy to look for you. And you can listen to our podcast, Meanwhile, at Manage Comics, every Thursday, I believe it goes out. And Jeff and Django, you guys got a podcast?
Yeah, we have Comics Place Presents. You can find that on most of your podcast feeds. You can also find me on most social media. Just look for Django Boren. And Comic Shop Assistant is our point of sale system that is taking the world by storm.
And I'm Jeff, like an ethereal space kitten, hard to track down, but you can always send me an email at jeff@thecomicsplace.com. Also, my Venmo is at Jeff-Figley, Figley.
Are we going to Patreon on this thing?
I guess it's the important social media. And our comic store that me and Jeff run.
Yes.
Right?
The Comics Place in Bellingham, Washington.
15-minute outro, right? Shop.thecomicsplace.com. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good to. Oh, I'm pretty sure that's copyright stricken, and we've just been banned.
Wasn't 30 seconds.
Thanks, guys.
Probably fine.
The Data Bros is a joint project from the teams behind Comic Shop Assistant and Manage Comics. Data Bros are Django Boren, Jeff Figley, and Brian Garside. Brian Garside produces and edits the episode. And you'll find more about the Data Bros online at databrosinc.com. Subscribe, like, and review the Data Bros on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.